Hello again, and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with arts reporter extraordinaire Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni, how's it going?
Hey, Alex, it's good to be here. I saw one of the last performances of You Got Older last night, so I'm feeling ready to talk some theater.
All right, cool. Well, we're recording on March 16th. We're a couple of days past the enormous snowstorm that we had. And I don't normally talk about the weather, but man, this is a banger. I think I measured like 22 inches on my deck here in Highlands Ranch, and it did have an effect on a lot of theater stuff. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But as usual, we'll review some of the shows that we've seen lately or reviewed, and take a look at some of what's coming up around stages all around Colorado. Also, later in the podcast, we have an interview. I might have to call this an exclusive interview, Toni, with Mandy Moore. I think
that title is warranted. This interview, when you told me that you had secured this interview from Mandy Moore, choreographer extraordinaire, I was like, I actually freaked out a little bit. I was like, I cannot wait to listen to that myself. And
yeah, it's not often.
And you got to tell the listeners. You got to tell the listeners about your Mandy Moore connection.
Oh, well, it's just I've just known her for a long time. I've known her family. I used to work at the Backstage Theater. Her mom, Wendy, was the artistic director there for many years, and I did a lot of shows with her, and also was on stage a lot with Bob Moore, Mandy's dad, and of course everybody knows Missy Moore around the Colorado theater community as a great director, and actor as well. She's up at Thunder River, and so it wasn't like I had to work the contacts of my Hollywood contacts or anything like that. Mandy's great. She was very, very generous with her time to come on. And so, but anyway, for those who didn't know, she did the choreography with the I'm Just Ken piece at the Oscars. And she also did the In Memoriam segment, which is a very different kind of thing. It was a real departure from the usual image of the people, and included some really neat, subtle dance performances in addition to the roll call of those who've passed. So definitely stick around for that. That'll be coming up here in just a little bit. And Toni, we had something in the mailroom. Do you want to touch on this one?
Yeah, we got it. We actually got two things coming in from from the mailroom this week from some listeners. So read them both out here. First was from Gretchen Rosalie. She says, "One-time critic here for your fine website. You and Toni are doing a great job with the podcast. Bravo. I really enjoy it, and it's been a great way to get to know local theater." Then she goes on, "Yesterday, my husband and I did a matinee of Rubicon and an evening of Cebollas with dinner at Cordier 44 in between."
So both at the Denver Center. Yeah.
Right in there, yeah. Or Corridor 44, excuse me. I think I did the slightly more French pronunciation, but it's Corridor 44. And then continues, "Not sure if you mentioned that restaurant on your latest podcast, but it's reasonable with the unique European ambiance, delicious food, and lots of champagne. Something this New Yorker loves compared to all the beer I usually run into in these pier parts." Which, that's very fair, Gretchen. Very fair.
Yeah.
This is definitely a beer town. And then continues, "Normally I find the theater reviews on the website very forgiving, especially with local theater, so I was ready to just sit and enjoy these two plays. But I was truly wowed by them. I felt I'd been to Broadway with the level of direction, acting, and set design for Rubicon, and writing. We also saw the reading of One Shot and loved it. Wish we could have seen more of the readings."
So there's talking about the Colorado New Play Festival.
Yeah. So that was a great message there from Gretchen. Thank you for writing, and glad to hear that you love the podcast. And
what else did you have in the mailbag?
We got one more. This was actually on a comment on our website. It was a comment on the most recent episode of the podcast from local actor David Kincannon. David says, "As a frequent theater goer and actor, I found the discussion about reviews extremely useful and enlightening. Thank you to Alex, Toni, and Alice for this thoughtful conversation." So thank you so much, David. Appreciate the kind words. And if you ever want to get in contact with us, you can feel free. You can either leave a comment on the website or on our Facebook, or feel free to send something in via our email at info at onstagecolorado.com.
That's it. So as we were just noting, we had a shit ton of snow, and it really affected a lot of shows. especially on Thursday night, which was kind of the brunt of the storm. And, lots of theaters canceled their shows Thursday and maybe even some on Friday. I'm not sure, due to the snow apocalypse. So it's not exactly the show must go on mentality that drives a lot of live performance, but honestly, I didn't know that they had much choice.
Yeah, when you're having I over here I'm over in Boulder County, we had about 18 inches of snow, and we were on one of the more mild sides of things. And when that's mild, you're like, okay, maybe it's just not worth it to go and risk getting on the roads. And I think that's the calculus that I did. I didn't leave my house since Wednesday. I was just like, I'm just going to bunker down here. And yeah, there were just a slew of cancellations. I just don't think it was possible. I think theaters did make the right call, even if it was a hard call.
Yeah, it's tough, especially when you've got a big touring show like Shrek that was, I think, only in town for 4 days. That's a lot. That's a lot of revenue lost. But people were not going to come out. It's one thing. Coloradans are generally pretty hardy about getting out in the snow, but the streets had not been plowed. It was just impassable. It would have been almost impossible. I still can't get out of my driveway. So anyway, but yeah, it doesn't make sense to put on shows. And I do remember back when I was working at the Backstage Theater in Breckenridge, it was pretty rare for us to do that, just because in Summit County and in ski towns, they plow the damn roads. And they have, they really do. It's easier to get around up there with much more snow than it is down here, where they just seem to think it's I don't know, secondary thought. And I think about all the taxes I pay here in Douglas County, and it's like, damn it, plow the damn roads. So anyway, well, that's neither here nor there. Things are clearing up and melting like crazy. Although I did hear there's another storm coming possibly in another week or two. So this is the snowy time of year. So.
You heard it here first on the OnStage Colorado Weather Podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll be doing a weather segment every week. So our main thing we wanted to talk about was, there's been a lot of season announcements coming out recently from, the Denver Center Broadway, Arvada Center, Curious, a couple others. So you were asking, what makes a good lineup for a theater season? So, Toni, if you were the one picking a season for our mythical troupe, the Codpiece Players, where would you start?
Well, I think the big overlying thing that I would probably start with is, I think, and this is something I've been hearing from audiences, something I've been hearing from artistic directors about how they're kind of thinking, and it's a sentiment that I kind of agree with pretty broadly, is I think audiences right now, a good season is going to leave them feeling optimistic and perhaps a little bit, I don't want to say overly, being overly funny or so, but I think people right now are not in a mood where they want to go and be lectured at in the theater right now. So I think a big thing that I would be kind of keeping in mind as a theater is kind of balancing those different concerns, making sure that people come to the theater and they're walking away feeling like they had a good time, so that they want to get their butt back in the seats. Because we're still in that recovery phase right now where theaters are still trying to bring back audiences. And so if people have a so-so experience, or they're not sure how they're feeling afterwards, I just don't think that's a place that you want to have audiences in right now when you're still in that rebuilding and regrowth phase. So I think I think it's smart to pick some old hats, if you will, in addition to maybe some newer stuff that airs on the slightly comedic side, or at least just warm, optimistic side. Because, yeah. What about you, Alex? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, well, it seems like the right combo for any theater is always going to be, unless you have a source of funding that you don't care how many people or how many butts you have in seats, but it's going to be a mix of getting people in, filling those seats with maybe something more arty or weighty material that maybe won't put as many people in seats. But it's an age-old conundrum for theater. But maybe it's even tougher now with all the other competition, as we've mentioned before, from the Nuggets game to whatever is streaming on Netflix or whatever. But there are also exceptionals. I was thinking of Belle of Amherst, which was Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, one woman, kind of a quiet show. Not, some might not think it's going to blow the roof off the house, but Jess Rubley was fantastic in it, and they sold out a lot of those. So it's not an exact science by any means, but you were talking about people not wanting to be lectured at, and so one Curious Theater, I think, has sometimes been a criticism levied against them that a lot of their picks are kind of sometimes kind of lecturing at you. So what did you think of their announcement? I mean, it starts off with a comedy, POTUS, or Behind Every Great Dumbass, or Seven Women Trying to Keep Him Alive, Selena Fillinger's comedy. So I don't know about these other ones.
I actually thought that Curious did a nice job. I mean, they Curious is obviously an interesting one because they can't exactly just take we're going to do stuff light, because that doesn't work with their mission to do serious, thought-provoking works that are cutting edge and kind of new. And so I thought that they did actually. I was pretty impressed with Curious's 27th season announcement, starting with POTUS strong. I think that's a very funny farce comedy, and perfect timing with the election right then. I mean, we all just need to laugh at politics then. So I think I think that'll be a big hit. Downstate. Okay, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think Thunder River's doing that show also later.
I think they are, yeah.
What about Downstate? What is that?
Downstate. This is a really controversial one. So Downstate is about. Give me just 1 second. I want to make sure that I get the summary right, because it is accurate. Yeah. So Downstate is by Bruce Norris, and it's the story of 4 men who are convicted of sex crimes who share a group home post-incarceration. So
Yikes.
That does not exactly fit my criteria of something light or not weighty, but it is a very sharp script. It's going to be directed by Christy Montour Larson over there.
Very much sounds like Curious's wheelhouse.
When I was talking with Jada and Janine about it, they were just like, "We don't think anybody else in town would touch this script, and that's why we had to. That's why we had to do it."
So maybe benchmark.
Maybe that's a good point. Maybe it does sound like a benchmark play. And then they're moving to Confederates, which is a Dominique Morcey, she's done work over there quite a bit. And it's about this Sarah, who is an enslaved rebel turned Union spy, and Sandra, who is a modern day professor at a private university. And it's kind of their overlapping lives there. And then the final one is the Case of the Existence of God by Samuel Hunter, who is a local favorite, writer of The Whale. And it's going to be directed by Warren Sherrill. And it's actually just this really moving piece about 2 single fathers who are just uniting and kind of sharing a conversation. So that one's actually a little bit more sweet.
Okay. Yeah, and they have one more yet to be named show coming. So if we look over on the other side of town in Arvada, they just came out with and this looks like a pretty decent lineup. It does have some familiar, shows that have been done quite a few times here in Colorado already. But Waitress, the musical, it's a Sarah Bareilles thing with book by Jesse Nelson. And I think, is this a musical comedy? You knew about this one?
Oh, yeah. This is the musical comedy of their season, I think. It's about this woman who is working as a waitress at this pie factory. It's based on a movie. It's got incredible music. I think when it opened on Broadway, everybody was kind of like, "What? A musical about a pie shop? Who's going to show up to that?" Well, it turns out a lot of people would show up to that. It was this big smash hit on Broadway. Its touring production was hugely popular around the country and the globe. And yeah, I've never actually seen it live, but I did see the filmed version of Waitress with Sarah Bareilles, the writer, actually stepping in to play the role. They released that in cinemas recently, and I was lucky enough to go and watch that. And so that made me very excited to see it staged at Arvada. I think it's a good company to do this show.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that one coming through as a touring Broadway show at the Denver Center, but maybe I didn't see it. But yeah, I guess that's one I should know about, but I don't. Another show they're doing is Dracula, a feminist revenge fantasy. Really?
Dracula is a very funny comedy by Kate Hamill, who is kind of the playwright of the moment. She's also got a play coming over at the Denver Center, Emma, recently. Right. And it's a very funny take on Dracula that does not just keep the women as the damsels in distress. They get some agency.
That's good. And you were maybe going to have Kate on the podcast, right?
I'm in the process of setting that up.
Great. Well, we're getting all kinds of cool folks on here. So, and then also they're doing Once Upon a Mattress, which is your safe musical, very, very old one, but fun. And then Clybourne Park in the Black Box Theater and Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, which has been done a lot around Colorado. I don't know much about Clybourne Park though.
Yeah, Clybourne Park, they had a pretty prominent production at Curious a couple years back, and this is a contemporary adaptation of Raisin in the Sun, and so it's kind of riffing on that. It's about what happens when a white family moves into this predominantly black neighborhood years later, and so it's kind of about the effects of gentrification. So it's that same neighborhood that the Youngers were in from A Raisin in the Sun, but it's the reverse. Instead of it being the first black family to move into a white neighborhood like it is in Raisin in the Sun, it's the opposite.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah, and there's another take on Raisin in the Sun coming up at Town Hall. Raisin is another version of that. So, so anyway, yeah, I guess the upshot is that it's impossible to plan a season perfectly. You're always going to have ones that you're like, damn, I thought that would have done better, or this one was like, holy crap, this one really attracted a lot of attention. Unless you're talking about just things that people are super familiar with that they're going to come out for, but you can't do those things all the time. So props to theaters that and I would say most of the theaters around town here and even around the state, they do try. It's not common that you see just like one Neil Simon after one Beauty and the Beast kind of stuff for the whole season. So anyway, any more thoughts on picking that season for our codpiece players?
I guess the only other advice is I would be like, you can't ignore the holiday season, and how you program that I think is incredibly important. I think it's very interesting that for the past couple of seasons, the Arvada Center has kind of done, they're not an overtly holiday-y show, but something fairy tale-y. And they're continuing that tradition here with Once Upon a Mattress, like they've done Beauty and the Beast December and Cinderella. And so I think how theater companies approach their holiday season is always really interesting to me, because if you sit that season out, I mean, you are just losing out on so much money, because that is when folks are like, they're available and they are wanting to be entertained. And so I think if you are going to I think that is a good time. If you are going to pick something safe, throw it in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And also something that you can bring the kids to, because, that's the Christmas season. So another one is, a lot of theaters have the option or the capability to do outdoor shows. And those are, that's another thing you need to think about. It's like, how will this show, survive if there's wind or rain or things like that? So yeah, all kinds of stuff that, artistic directors and theater boards have to figure out. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the upcoming season and lots of great shows already announced.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, look around the state at all the live theater coming up, as well as my interview with Mandy Moore. OnStage Colorado is sponsored by the Town Hall Arts Center in Littleton, presenting Raisin from March 22nd through April 14th. A musical retelling of Lorraine Hansberry's classic A Raisin in the Sun, the soulful and inspiring musical is about a proud black family's quest for a better life in 1951 Chicago. It's a timeless story of family conflict, forgiveness, and the pursuit of the American dream. Tickets at townhallartscenter.org. OnStage Colorado is also sponsored by the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Betsy, with several upcoming shows, including the kids' improv show Mad Librarians, with shows in Denver and Boulder, as well as the Kingpenny Golden Radio Hour, also with shows in Denver and Boulder. Tickets at betsy.org. Support also comes from the Aurora Fox Arts Center, whose next show is Gem of the Ocean, opening March 23rd and running through April 14th. The play is the first in the Aurora Fox's commitment to produce August Wilson's 10-play The American Century Cycle. Boasting multiple Tony Awards and Pulitzer Prizes for drama, the cycle follows the lives of Black Americans throughout each decade of the 20th century. Tickets at aurorafoxartscenter.org. All right, welcome back to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with Toni Tresca, and it's time for our legendary amazing, famous weekly trip around the state to see what's on stage now and coming up. So recently reviewed that's on our site was Cuarento y Ocho. I'm trying to say that properly. At Su Teatro, which is, a play about a bombing in Boulder I think back in the 80s that our reviewer Eric went to and thought it was really, really impactful. So I think that's running for another weekend or two. Mm-hmm. Two shows that have already closed, Capella Colorado Ballet and also Boulder Ballet's Mindfield. Our reviewer Alice got to both of those and was impressed quite a bit by both of them. So, even if these are over, it's good to know about what these companies are capable of next time. So you might take a look at those reviews. At the Backstage Theater, our reviewer Karen Mason checked out Inventing Van Gogh. She called it a gripping exploration of artistry, obsession, and the blurred lines between reality and truth. That's running through March 30th. On the classic side is The Glass Menagerie at Vintage Theater in Aurora. Eric was at that on Saturday, so we'll have that review on there, and that runs through April 21st. Great play. Mm-hmm. Vintage also has a one-off on Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 23rd, with Drag Stravaganza. I love that. emceed by Troy Lickey, and I love these names. Starchild, Pop-Tart Sexton, Ollie Bottoms, and surprise guests. So, man, that sounds like a drag show to check out.
Oh, yeah. And that's in relation to their Georgia McBride that's currently running over there, which is also a hoot if you haven't seen it. And I've gotten to see a couple of these drag queens before, Starchild in particular, and they do a really nice job. So I'm going to do my best to check out that show. I think it's in their lobby space over there. So the cabaret,
that sounds like a lot of fun. So you mentioned Cost of Living at Curious Theater in Denver. That's running March 14th through the 21st. And this features performers from Family, which is the theater for folks with disabilities. And they're, it's, I'm going to be at that show coming up, I think, this Thursday. So I'll have a review of that. And then The Music Man at Lakewood Cultural Center. This is a Performance Now production running March 22nd through April 7th. And Eric will be at that one. Noises Off opens at the Arvada Center. Alice will be at that on opening night. That runs all the way through May 5th. Super excited to see that very funny Michael Frayn comedy. Big Fish at Open Stage at Lincoln Center in Fort Collins. Susan will be at that for a review, and that runs March 23rd through April 10th. Of course, that's based on a novel that led to a film back in the early 2000s. That was really, really interesting. Great story about family and fathers and sons, things like that. Gem of the Ocean opens at the Aurora Fox. Eric will be at that as well. This is a 2005 Tony Award nominee for Best Play, and it's part of Aurora Fox's commitment to produce August Wilson's 10-play The American Century Cycle, which follows the lives of Black Americans throughout each decade of the 20th century. So this is kicking that off, and it runs March 23rd through April 14th. So there's going to be a lot of August Wilson at the Fox over the coming years. Speaking of Family, they're also doing Miss Holmes at the Parsons Theater in North Glen, March 21st through April 7th. That's a fun show, kind of like a female version of the Sherlock Holmes tales, and Eric will be at that one. And then the aforementioned Raisin at Town Hall Arts Center, that is coming up, opening soon, and Eric will be at that one. And then we talked about this last time, Theater Artibus is their new show. The Bluebird opens at the Savoy in Denver and runs March 22nd through April 7th. I am really excited to get to that. So we can't stop crying about their last show. And some of the advanced pictures that show, I can never remember the gentleman's name, but he
Booba.
Okay. It looks like he's popping out of suitcases and there's a lot of mime and pantomime and comedy, physical comedy in these shows that definitely recommend if you want to see something really different. Guadalupe in the Guest Room, a Tony Meneses play, which I saw at Creed a few years back. Great play. That's going to be at the Firehouse from March 23rd through April 20th. Eric will be at that one. So it's an interesting setup. It's about a man whose wife died, and his mother-in-law had come to help nurse his wife, and she kind of doesn't leave after his wife is passed. It's a very interesting relationship story. Making of a Great Moment, our new reviewer, Judith Sears, is going to be checking this out at the Millabo Art Theater in Colorado Springs. That play runs through March 24th. So, and hopefully a new reviewer in Colorado Springs will be able to cover some more of the theater down there, in addition to our other reviewer, April Took, who's just doesn't have as much time to get out. So, also on stage or opening soon at the Durango Arts Center, Hand to God, comedy about religion and an evil puppet, running March 15th through 31st. You mentioned this last week. Viva Theater is at the Dairy doing Talking With, March 22nd through April 7th. Is that a one-hander?
Actually, it's an 11-hander.
Okay.
It's 11 monologues by women, just reflecting their experience, kind of what was it like in 1981. And it's a really interesting theater troupe up in the Boulder area. They're nomadic. They perform out of the Dairy Center, and their entire mission is just dedicated to giving older adults an opportunity to get up on stage. As they're so often, the executive director over there, Abigail Wright, was talking about how the only things you see up on stage are 20-year-olds talking about 20-year-old issues. Right. And so they're like, it is actually just really, there is a niche in the market to just do stories that relate to people who are not 20 years old.
Absolutely.
And as I am in my 20s, so I can't personally relate to that. I'm loving the 20-year-old stories on stage, but I can see why that's not appealing to someone who's not 20. It's not their life. So.
Yeah, and I think people have gotten a little weary of the plays that just show older people as, Alzheimer-ridden, doddering fools. I know when Paul Stroley, who wrote a Jukebox for the Algonquin, is up at the Miners Alley, was saying that was the one thing he didn't want to do, with his play. So that's another great example of a play, that talks more about some older folks' issues. That's also very funny. So that's still running too. Anything else, Tony? What else you got for us?
The only other thing that I got is if you're looking for some dinner theater up in your right now, and you've already been to see Crazy for You at Candlelight, Jester's Dinner Theater, which is over in Longmont, and they're going to be doing My Fair Lady. That's opening on March 29th and running through June 9th. So you got a nice long time if you want to go see a classic musical up there in that space. So
okay, well, I didn't know Jester's was still around. I think they took kind of a hiatus, didn't they?
Funny story. So they announced they were closing in 2022, but then they were not able to sell the building, and so in order to still keep producing an income, they decided to open the theater back up because it was actually more profitable for them to produce theater than it was because they couldn't get a buyer for the building, which is insane to me. But it was true. It was their reality. And so now they're back up and doing shows. The owners anticipate the theater's only going to be around for another 1.5, 2 years until they find a permanent buyer. But in the meantime,
all right. Well, I was just looking at my master Google Sheets list of all the theaters that we track on our calendar, and I'd actually deleted them, so I'll have to add them back because I didn't know. So good for Jesters to come roaring back for a little while. All right. Well, hold on, and here in a sec we'll get to my interview with Mandy Moore. You're at home in LA right now?
Yeah, finally home. It's been kind of a crazy, couple months, but yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to come down from the Oscars. It was pretty crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Let's talk about that. So I have to say I'm not a huge fan of the Academy Awards. That they take a long time, and some of the stuff is lame. But this year seemed particularly good, and the piece that you put together with Ryan Gosling with the Kens from Barbie was really. Boy, it just delighted everybody. It looked like, in the house there and all around. So how did this come together? Was it pretty quick, or did you have time to plan for it?
Well, no, I guess when the nominations came out is when that whole flow starts, right? So they have to wait until the nominations to come out to figure out what they're going to do for the show. And my dear friend Raj Kapoor is actually the showrunner. So he, we were all crossing our fingers that I'm Just Ken or something from Barbie would be nominated. Uh-huh. And then when it came through, he was like, he said, well, would you do this? I was like, of course I will. And he's like, Ryan's really excited. So yeah. that's kind of how it all started.
Right. So you did have a couple of months to plan it out. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's about a month. I mean, I don't remember when nominations came out, but yeah, it actually goes pretty quick. But there's obviously the nominations have to happen, then everyone has to agree that they're going to do it, and then you have to create it, then you have to rehearse it, then you do it. So
right. So I think it's fair to say that you've acquired quite a reputation as the choreographer to go to for big pieces like this. Like La La Land, and you did the Eras tour choreography for Taylor Swift, and I was just wondering, how do you start? I mean, how do you go about managing a routine like this? So this was 63 plus dancers or something like that. I mean, where do you start?
Yeah, it was 62 plus, obviously Slash and Mark Ronson and Wolfgang Van Halen and Ryan and the 4 movie Kens. It was quite a crew. It's funny when you like start talking about process, because for me, it's the same. It doesn't matter if it's, one person that I'm dealing with or if it's like hundreds of people. I always have to, the first thing is the track, right? Because that becomes the roadmap for what I need to do. So my process usually starts with just I call it barring out the track, or I just, I kind of visually on a piece of paper represent the track in my mind. So I know when the verse is happening or the chorus is happening or the bridge. And then I can identify from that who's singing. And then from that, I can start to go like, okay, well, if he wants to start in the audience, it's probably going to take him about this long to get to the stage. And then, he was really involved creatively. So, he had a roadmap kind of already of what he wanted to do. It was just a matter of me, working with him and then obviously facilitating his vision. But yeah, for me, it's all about the track. If I don't have a track, then it's really hard for me to do my job, especially in live television, and other mediums, not so much. But the track really kind of it dictates what you're going to do choreographically.
Right. And of course, you're in LA, so you've got access to a huge talent pool of dancers. Do you have a core group that you go to, or how do you cast that?
Yeah, so I also did the In Memoriam number, and I actually did end up doing an audition for that because I felt like it was a pretty specific like kind of dancer I was looking for. And that was filled with some people that I hadn't worked with before, and then some people that I had. And then for the Kens, I just thought, I'm just going to direct book this because I know enough people between myself and my associate, Jillian Myers, and Rita Mae Bland, who was the casting person. Between all of us, we kind of knew enough people. So, the process is we just go to the agencies and we ask for submissions, and then they kind of give us this casting document of people they have submitted based off of specifics that we asked for. And then we just go through and go like, oh yeah, I know him, or I don't know him, or I've worked with him, or that's a friend of somebody. So it's kind of an interesting process. But yeah, in the end, we had to make sure they were all available for all the rehearsals and that they showed up. That's kind of all I cared about. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure having all those professional dancers makes it all easier. And, but Ryan's no slouch himself. I guess, you worked with him in La La Land, and he's done quite a bit of dancing along his career. So, and you worked with him kind of in collaboration on what were some of the things that you came up with together or that he brought to the table?
Like I said, he really was very, very collaborative with this. Like, it was so nice to be able to work alongside him because he had, I don't know what the process was prior to the creative pitch that we were all on the meeting together. I think he and Greta had maybe talked about the like gentlemen prefer blondes reference visually. Right. Obviously that wasn't in the choreography necessarily, but visually that was kind of the world that we were going to live in. And, like I said, he really, he knew he wanted to start in the audience. He wanted to join a bunch of dejected Kens on the stairs, and then there was the stairs to being Kens. And then, we called the next section when he walked forward, the like calling all Kens, it was like he's putting his bat signal up in the air for all the Kens to join. And he's also a huge fan of Busby Berkeley, has been forever. So, I was like, it would be really great to do this like awesome top shot. And then that's where the, Barbie sea of Barbie heads came in. And, it's funny when you collaborate together because you're just in the moment. I don't know whose idea was what. Honestly, we like really he had an overall vision for it, and he's very funny in the moment as well, and even when we'd be rehearsing, he'd do something very funny. And I'm like, oh yeah, you should for sure do that. That is really good. Or the breakable boards that came out of rehearsal where it's like, maybe I should punch a breakable board. I was like, yes.
And it should be funny.
We should do that.
I just wanted to back up just a sec. You said Busby Berkeley. I'm not sure I know what that is.
Yeah. So Busby Berkeley, he was a director in the 30s, and he's the one who's very famous for those very iconic overhead shots with like lots of girls, or the camera comes around and the people kind of peel off. He had a very distinct style in his directing. And Ryan's really been a fan of his for a long time, as many people are. They're very like cultural. I think when people think about dance, sometimes they just think about the work of Busby Berkeley. So yeah.
So, you often work on kind of long tail things where you might not hear, I don't know, it takes place over a long time. But this was like kind of like an immediate shot where like all of a sudden you were everywhere. What kind of response have you been getting from this?
Alex, it was nuts. Like I've been in kind of, chaos like that before. La La Land was a bit like that. And obviously Taylor's stuff is kind of like that. But this one really took me by surprise. I mean, the morning after, people were just like wanting to talk about how we all made it. And it was cool. I mean, I haven't been in live television in a while. Like I was in live for a long time. And then I moved over to scripted. And then obviously I've been working a lot in film. So yeah, it was really interesting to be like, okay, we just did that last night. And now it's like blown up everywhere. I mean, I'm just so stoked that people took to it the way they did, because that was the goal. Like we just wanted it to be a party, and we wanted it to be one of those moments that was like last hurrah for Ken in the Barbie movie. And I feel like we did. Yeah,
you absolutely did. Yeah, that was really, Ken went out with a bang. But, I didn't know that you did the In Memoriam piece. And so this was, instead of just showing stills of the actors who'd passed, that there were a couple of some dancing going on. How did come up with that idea?
Yeah. So again, my dear friend Raj, who was the showrunner, had this idea months ago when he came on as showrunner. He really wanted to he used to be a dancer, and he just loves dance and choreography. And he said, I really want to put dancers on the In Memoriam. And I know it's a big swing because people, that's not what you do. It's the first time they've ever had dance, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously when Andrea Bocelli and Matteo signed on, and then we're going to do Conti Portero, it was a very fragile number, and I think people are divided about it, which rightfully so. Some people are like, why are those dancers on? I can't see anything. But I think equally, there were some people that really thought it was really beautiful. And, as that after losing my mom a little over a year ago, I really felt like I knew how to create from that space. I knew how to respect and to understand what it means to miss somebody who's passed, And so for me, that was a personal number for me. I mean, it was for everybody else too. And obviously all those that have passed and were respected in the In Memoriam, I definitely created for them, but personally it was also just for me. I got to create something for my mom.
I get that. That's great. I really liked it. I thought it was different. Jen was a little concerned about not being able to see the picture. She's like, why don't they show them closer? I'm like, well, they're trying to get the shot to cover the dancers and so maybe that's something, if you do it again, you can figure out another way to satisfy that need to see the faces of those actors.
It's hard. It's a lot of things you have to include. And Raj and I talked a lot about it, and I kept thinking about it the days after, because I thought, it's not a surprise that these people have passed. Everyone knows that these people have passed. It's, for me, was more about, being able to express the emotion of what you feel when that happens. And, sometimes that can be done through songs, sometimes through the video medium, sometimes through dance, sometimes through poetry, it can be expressed a lot of different ways. And, I just thought, I don't know, I appreciate that people, that the Academy and Raj and the producing team took a big swing, because you can always do things the same.
Right.
But how do you, we all have to evolve. And, I don't think in any sort of a way we disrespected any of it, but it was, even Hamish, the director, he and I had a lot of conversations. He's like, man, this is hard to shoot, because if I shoot past the dancers and Andrea and Matteo, then I don't see them. But if I don't include the why, then you don't really understand the full picture, And so it was a tough job. I mean, I thought he did a good job, especially for ever having those kinds of things involved in the In Memoriam. It never happened before.
Right. Yeah. So, one more thing about the Oscars. I know you've been kind of involved in some of these discussions or pushing for the Academy to add choreography to one of the awards. What can you say about that? Where's that at?
Well, I've been involved in those conversations for a long time. And I actually did try to join this past year, but because of the choreographers being moved into the technology branch, I was not able to find sponsors, which, I've been in conversations with the Academy about. So, that's kind of the first step is I think we've got to be able to get some more choreographers into the Academy. And then, I'm on the fence about it. I actually, probably it sounds odd, but I don't think we need our own category. I think that because there's not really enough dance to support that and choreography to support that. Some years we have a ton of films that have it, and then some years we don't have very much at all. But what I feel would be great would be consideration of a special committee or something if there is a year that it's deemed that there was excellence in choreography, or a film that's nominated 14 times or 10 times that has choreography, that obviously part of the success of the film was choreography.
Sure.
That there would be some way to award an honorary Oscar or excellence in something from the Academy, just to know, or just to acknowledge that that's part of the filmmaking, and so I look forward to being able to be in the Academy and get in there, because I would love to have those conversations with the people that make those decisions, because it's not so easy. I don't think it's just like adding a category, because I don't think there's enough films, even though I wish, of course I wish there was just a category and we could all get Oscars, but I think the reality of that it's a lot more complex than that. So, but there's a way to do it, and a way to honor the excellence, I think.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, Hollywood, all the films there's all these huge films with CGI and car explosions and outer space and all that stuff. But something about dance, like especially a big dance number, like in La La Land or other ones. Why do you think that dancers, the choreography still resonates so strongly with people on film and on stage?
I think it's kind of for me, it's probably a bit of a mystery. I think a lot of people that like dance, because there are certainly a number of people that hate dance and choreography and singing. So, but the people that like it, I think it feels like they don't know how they made it. It feels magical, right? And I always think about with dance and singing and musicals, I just think like, I love the quote, or I think there's a quote that's something about like, if you can't say it, you sing it. If you can't sing it, you dance. And it's true that dance, you are able to express things with dance that you maybe can't say. And I think also dance allows people to fill in blanks for themselves. Like they get to go like, oh, that dance was about this, or I felt this. And you can feel something completely different than the person sitting next to you, because we're not telling you exactly what to feel, because we're using our words as communication. We're using shapes and feeling and transition and nuance and texture, the things that you and I could look at the same piece and get something completely different from it. I think maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think so. I also think it's maybe some of the same vibe that people get from enjoying sports. They're watching athletes do things that they couldn't hope to do. Most of us are blobs on the couch, watching, athletes or dancers. It's that same thing. It's like, wow, but I think the kind of stuff, those big numbers that you do, the choreography, the precision, so many people working in unison to make it happen is really, it's kind of dazzling, because I in some of the theater that I used to do, I never did any musicals. I auditioned once for a musical and I was so bad at the dance. I was just like, oh my God. It's like some people it just means, it just doesn't work, but so that's why I love watching dance, because it's so far beyond anything I could do. So So I wanted to close out just by asking about, so you, as we well know, that you choreographed, the Eras tour dancers for Taylor Swift. That tour is still going on. And I know that you have to occasionally go in and, like, if they have new dancers or things like that, how often do you have to do that? How involved are you right now?
I mean, funny enough, not much, because that's part of my job, is to like get it up, get it going, and let it survive on its own, and I have a really great dance captain who is also my associate, Amanda Balin, and she's on the road and she dances with everybody, and her job is to make sure that we continue to facilitate and do every night the show that was made. So, they just got back from Singapore, and we're going to go back into some cleaning rehearsals and things, and before they head out to Europe. But it's a very strange thing, Alex, because it's like you work really hard to make this thing, and then it just kind of like goes away like a traveling circus, and it just like, never really see it again. And it was really fun. Obviously they shot it for the Eras movie, right? So we did that in LA, so I got to go back and again do some cleanup rehearsals and work with the director and the cameraman and all that, and Taylor, to just make sure it was shot the way that we wanted it. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it since August, I think. They've been gone. They've been just forever away. So, but it'll be fun to dive back into that world with them, and get them ready for Europe. Because then they go off again, like for half a year or something. They just go away forever.
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't know how she does it.
Yeah,
that's away for a long time. But do you have any other jobs like that coming up where you'd choreograph a big concert like that?
No, I mean, well, it's so weird. My life is such a it's similar to probably the acting world. Like, it's like I'm just do my next job, whatever my next job is that comes up, and I'm an independent contractor like everybody else. So, it's like some days I think like, wow, am I ever going to get a job again? And then all of a sudden the phone rings. So you just never know. I mean, I never thought I'd get Taylor, never thought I'd be doing the Oscars. And so just, you kind of wait for the next thing because, or you make your next thing, that's also the thing is, having meetings and developing and doing all of that a lot of people do out here. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know what I'm doing next week.
I was going to ask what's next coming up that you can talk about, but I mean,
just going into Taylor stuff right now, and then getting that ready for Europe, and then after that, I really don't know. We might be doing some stuff for Snow White again, but yeah, I don't know. And then in a month we'll talk, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so crazy and busy.
I know. Well, at your mom's memorial, I'd asked you the same question, and you were like, I'm going to do this Taylor Swift tour and starting tomorrow. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I did. I started it literally that next morning. It was crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, you never know what's going to come up, and especially after this Oscar buzz, I guess you could say you're going to be even more in demand. So.
Who knew, Alex? Who knew?
I know. I've known you since you were a kid, and starting there at Summit School of Dance in Frisco. And so you get back to Colorado much to see? So your dad and your sister are in the Carbondale area.
Yeah, I try, but it's been so crazy. Like, I have not had a second to do anything. So, hopefully this summer, if I've got a little bit of time off, I'd love to try and get up there for the 4th or something. It's just so beautiful in Colorado during the summer. So yeah, I'll try. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. All
right. Well, Mandy Moore, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy doing all kinds of stuff, but I appreciate you hopping on with the OnStage Colorado podcast. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado podcast. Thanks so much to Mandy Moore for making time in her super busy schedule to talk to us, and hopefully, yes, someday they will have a choreographer award of some sort at the Oscars. We'll be back next week with another interview that I think is still TBD, but you were working on one, right, Tony?
Yes, it'll either be with Kate Hamill of Emma at the Denver Center, or it'll be Blue Diamond Cabaret, who is a group who is producing shows over in the Boulder area. Both of those are coming down the pipeline, just TBD on exact scheduling.
Okay, so stick around. We'll have something interesting no matter what. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast, wherever you get your audio stuff. And, give us a review or a couple of stars if you're enjoying this, and definitely forward it to other theater lovers in your life, because people really enjoy hearing this roundup of shows going on around Colorado, as well as the cool interviews that we do. So also be sure to check out all the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com. I'm Alex Miller.
I'm Toni Tresca. And we'll see you at the show.
Indeed we shall.